My name is Sandra and I live in Hobart, which is in the state of Tasmania in Australia. Tasmania is a beautiful island state to the south of Australia, and it has a lot of large World Heritage areas in it. These have always inspired me in the composition of my quilts and my subject matter, but I'm also interested, as I'm a historian by trade, my interest is also in the social and cultural and industrial heritage of where I live. My quilt seawall, came about because I was chasing my dog in my local industrial park and came upon this wall, which is only, you can only see it at low tide a couple of times a year. And I was so fascinated by the wall and I started to investigate its history. It is a heritage listed wall and it has a history of 200 years. It started in the early 1800s as being a seawall as part of a shipbuilding yard, which was highly successful for a number of years. It then became a timber drying and storing yard, and after that it then became a fruit processing and canning facility which employed about 1,000 people. And then it fell into disuse, and the local community where I live were very concerned that it might change and become development. So there was community pressure for it to become a waterfront industrial park. And it's been very popular. It has a high visitation. And although the people who visit the park really wouldn't see the seawall, but I love the seawall because it's grotty and it's old and it's got very weathered beams in it, rusted bolts, and it's got a lot of algae and marine material from sea life. And so I've made a number of quilts in this series, in this seawall series. I think I'm up to about number 15 now. I work in papers. I've worked in paper textile for a long time, since I was at art school in the 1980s, and I became interested in applying paper to textile, and I've worked in that medium ever since. This particular series, I've been using a lot of vintage paper and magazines, and I soak them in water, transform them and deconstruct them, and they bring out interesting images when you deconstruct them in that way. So in the magazines, I use the vintage magazines. They have beautiful images and text, which I love using over here. Those vintage papers have lovely text in them. I also use the glossy lift-outs from newspapers. I soak them for a number of months, and the print deconstructs, and it means after you've done that, they're marvellous for painting and rusting. I oil a lot of my papers as well, and also burn them. I like to use recycled materials, really, as an ethical statement, as well as the authenticity they give to a piece. And when I'm making a piece, I work in small modules rather than a large single piece. This piece is made up of modules. It's easier to work with. And when I'm working, I'm always looking at composition and colour in the piece. I love stitching. I love slow stitching because I think when I stitch in that way, the papers become part of the piece, and they tell the story of the series that I'm working on.